we talk about the left and the right, but really we're
Yeah.
talking about people that believe in a sovereign, independent nation. We're talking about people that believe in a globalist establishment agenda. Advance UK sets out a clear message of what we believe in, a clear philosophy, so you have a good understanding as to what our position will be on almost anything, because you understand the guiding principles behind it. You know, it's not a party of egos, it's not a party of centralized control. It's a party bringing together patriotic people, fearless speakers, the brave and the bold, and the people from all different walks of life, not just people that have studied politics in university, that have then been an assistant to some MP, and then been given a cushy seat. At the moment, the way it lands is Reform are laughing really at everybody, the electorate especially, because they've got a monopoly on discontent. They know that people are fed up with Conservatives, fed up with Labour, and they are fully going after the sort of centralist votes. Even Dr. David Ball has described the Reform as a centralist party. There's a lot of work to be done. It's quite a literal political mountain that needs to be climbed. So whatever it is that I can help contribute, I'm there. I'm doing it to achieve that aim.
Hello there, everyone. Welcome to the World of Momos podcast. And on this episode of Reflections and Reactions, we have Richard Thomson with us. And we are going to talk to him about reform, about advance, about the politics, and everything in between. But first, we're going to say hello to Richard first, and then going to ask him to tell us a bit about his life history. How are you, Richard?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Momus. Thank you for having me on. It's a privilege and a delight. So thank you.
No, thank you for coming on. So, the floor is yours. Tell us about your life. Who is Richard?
Okay. Well, for anyone that's interested, I suppose my life, or political, or I suppose professional life, probably started really back in 25. I joined the Royal Marines. I actually passed training with somebody that I think probably is starting to get well known on the political scene. It's Ant Middleton.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, he probably doesn't even know who I am, to be fair. I joined his troop, past training. The Royal Marines training is about 32 weeks at the time when I did it. And I was an original from my troop. I started all the way right until the end. I got injured, and I literally joined Ant Middleton's troop for the last sort of 2 weeks. The commando phase, really. They do the commando tests, and then you've got the sort of pass out parade, and then you get scattered. So I sort of joined for about 2 weeks. But it's just interesting, really, that he seems to find himself politically active. I suppose the same sort of time that I do. I was in the Royal Marines for about 8 years. Sort of served a couple of tours of duty in Afghanistan. I left the Marines and did Maritime Security. So I don't know if you hear about the Houthi rebels causing a bit of trouble in the sort of Red Sea, that kind of stuff. So I would be on some of the merchant vessels that went around there to sort of deter pirates, that kind of thing. I then completely changed careers and now work in the financial technologies industry. So I suppose that's a little bit of Richard Thomson.
Well, you have just skidded past that 8 years, and I want to know that 8 years now because I had no idea about that. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of stories waiting over there. So yeah, tell us about how. But first, where were you born? Where did you grow up? Where are your roots? Because you're in Essex right now, aren't you?
Essex, yes, yeah. I lived in Essex most of my life. Only really didn't live in Essex when I was in the Marines. So I grew up in a place called Barkingside, which is on the central line of London. It's sort of northeast, but still within Essex. I grew up there pretty much, and until I left home and joined the Marines. Then I was skirting around sort of Plymouth, 4-2 Commando based in Plymouth. Then I moved to sort of Dorset, and I finished my career in the Marines in Dorset. When I left the Marines and moved back to Essex, it was exactly the time when my parents decided that they was going to move to pretty much where the barracks was in Dorset. So they moved down there to be with me as I left and went back to Essex. But they're still there, so they obviously quite enjoy it. So it didn't dampen it for them. which is quite nice because I get to go back there quite often, and see some of my old colleagues, and
Mm.
it's complete. I mean, I spent 4 years sort of based in that area in Dorset, so it's a lovely area. Second home really for me. Since then, I'm still in Essex, but I've moved a bit more further out. I now live sort of in between Colchester and Chelmsford, if you know the area at
Oh
all.
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
place
yeah,
called Witham.
yeah,
So I live there at the moment, and
yeah.
it's
We
obviously
we used to have a name, or still have a name for Widom, which I'm not gonna say over here.
all right, okay,
With- it starts with S. People would
all
know.
right, fair enough. I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a lot more developed now. Like there's a lot more things to do over there. A lot of my friends live over there as well, so
Oh,
I
really?
do visit there often. Yeah, because I'm based in Chelmsford, so and I used to live in Malden as well, so I go across all these places. Yeah,
Oh, nice. No,
yeah,
fair enough. Well, I mean, I very much like the place. It's
yeah, yeah.
you know, well connected,
Hmm.
to everywhere you need to get to, and it's a nice
Yeah,
rural sort of country sort of place, especially from where
yeah.
I grew up in Barkingside. It's pretty much an extension of London. Now,
Hmm.
London just spans out, doesn't it? So,
Yeah. I mean,
Barkingside
train
sort of.
station wise, like Witham is like far more connected than even Chelmsford. Even though Chelmsford is supposed to be the city, the central for Essex, but Witham is far more connected because it goes all the way to Suffolk and places like that as well. So it's easier connected. But tell us how hard was it getting into Royal Marines and stuff, but also like your 8 years as well. What combat did you see? If you saw any, you know, and what, like some stories. Tell us. Like I love hearing these stories.
Mm. Well, I mean, so the training, I suppose you could argue, is physically hard. They say, it's like the hardest and longest basic training in the world for going from civilian life
Hmm.
into the military life. They gave me some statistic when I was there a long time ago. Unfortunately, I've aged quite a bit, but they were saying that you're in the sort of whatever top percentage of athletes within the country. My life is a lot more comfortable now, so definitely not in that bracket. But physically, it's very hard. But what I would say, it's not really about the physicality of it. It wasn't really about that. They take you and they train you up and they build you. They've got obviously very clever people that have worked out training programs in order to make sure that people are progressed in a way in which they're going to be physically capable and ready to pass training. So it was more about the mental side of it.
Hmm.
You need to be able to get up every morning, self motivate yourself to be in a very unpleasant situation. Whether that is physically or sleep deprived, or whether you need to do some task and you're getting sort of a hard time from the training team and stuff like that. That's all part of it, that character building side of it, so that when you do face, I suppose, adversity in deployment or wherever else, you know that you're equipped mentally to be able to handle it. So it was about that. Physical side of it is there to be hard, but it's there to break you down from a mental capacity, as well as everything else that the training team have and put to you. But yeah, no, I mean, obviously passing training and then joining, as I did, was incredible. Really, it's a really good experience. Something that, and everyone will say the same, whatever it was Marines, whether it's the Army, the Navy, Air Force, everyone will say the same thing. If you've served, then the people that you serve with, it has a big impact on you. It has an impact on your mindset. For the rest of your life, you'll know people. And you'll know people that you won't even know their name. You'll know them as Smudge or something like that, or some nickname. And you've known them for 10, 15, 20 years. And then, you'll go on a stag do one day and it'll be one of his civilian friends and say, "Oh, how do you know Jacob?" And you think, who's Jacob? Something like that. And you think, "Oh, I just know him as Sharky or whatever," right? So, you can incredibly close to people that, you don't necessarily know their full name or something. But, no, I mean, it's a different world from what
What was
I
your like? Was the most challenging part of like not the challenging part of the training or anything, challenging part of any of the deployment that you have been on?
Most challenging. Well, I think it's tough to say really, because obviously there's quite a number of different challenging aspects of I suppose being on deployment, seeing active service and things like that, and it impacts people in very different ways. Some of the stuff that I think that I've probably witnessed has impacted somebody else, and has caused them potential, I suppose, issues in dealing with that sort of. So I would say it's probably being there for yours. With the Marines in particular. I mean, I can obviously speak for myself from experience. Is that it is literally a family. It is literally a family. So when someone else is having a hard time, you feel that as a family. If somebody else has been injured or whatever
Mm.
else, at that time when you're facing that conflict, you get through it. You professionally, your training is there, but every hardship, once you come back, you feel that. So it's more about, I suppose, the collective, the team, the family, feeling certain things. So it's a very close knit sort of group, especially, I suppose, within the troops that I've been in.
Mm.
Definitely so.
Is it true, like, because I've heard with some people, like, some people in these modern times as well, the most challenging thing that they find is being deployed but never seeing combat, like, all constantly being in training in anticipation that there will be combat, but never seeing it and then being sent home. Uh, do you like think that is a major part, like that would feel as if those soldiers will have those military personnel will have this regret in them?
Um, Interesting question. I think that's you be careful what you wish for,
Mm.
essentially. You should never wish to actually be, anyone that sort of thinks that, is they think that because they haven't seen active
Yeah.
service, that you haven't been in a conflict, with things. So yeah, you can argue that, well, they do the training, but nobody in their right mind should actually seek out sort of
Mm.
conflict in that sense. It'll be quite unfortunate, and I would really have a chat with somebody if that was their mindset. It's not something that I can understand from
Because
experience.
that can push them to do some silly things, can't it? Like, because they're looking for something, especially for an inexperienced someone, like really young, going over there and just training but not seeing combat, then they might seek something, or they might jump to something sooner because they want some action. Then that can be detrimental to the whole mission, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't talk for the young guys that are in any other service. Obviously, my experience is from the Marines, and I'm always getting from what I saw from the people that were left and right of me on deployments. They had their heads screwed on, as you would expect
Mm.
from professional soldiers. There's also the rules of engagement, which whether you completely agree with to the letter of or not, that they're the ones that are followed. So you can't really sort of have itchy trigger fingers, so to speak. You're it's very clearly outlined,
Mm.
and defined as to when you should and shouldn't be engaging, what you should be doing. And I know it's difficult. You have to make
Mm.
a split second decision, which is going to be extremely impactful, and you're potentially going to have people. I suppose legislate against you and investigate you and whatever else for making that decision. But at the end of the day, you've gone through the training, you've gone through the pre-deployment training. You know exactly where you can and can't engage with
Mm.
the enemy. But I can understand, I suppose, young people that have done training and looking
Mm.
for to have some
Wanting to
kind of
prove
active,
themselves. Yeah.
yeah, to prove themselves or whatever else. But I think that you'll probably lose if somebody was young enough to have that mindset and didn't see active service and it was a regret of theirs, they'll quite quickly grow out of that in life, I think.
Mm.
I don't think that that's a position people would hold on to, because that perhaps maybe it's just sort of having an immature mindset to it.
Mm.
It's not a pleasant experience.
Mm. Were you deployed in Afghanistan?
Yes, I was. Yeah, yeah.
For how long did you was your deployment?
So I did two deployments
Mm,
of 6 months. I think maybe the first one was sort of, in fact, the first one actually was 4 months because I came out a bit later than the rest of the troop. I did a sniper course, so I made it out there a bit later.
mm,
And the second one, yeah, was about 7 months, 7 month deployment.
mm. So, did anything happen out of the ordinary?
Yeah. Well, it was all out of the ordinary. Let me
Yeah.
tell you that. It was a completely different world. Just looking, I suppose, at the mindset. The sort of villages, the compounds in which they build and things like that. It's you know you don't. I mean, it was rural as well, so it's not like we go
Mm,
to Kabul or somewhere and you see something that resembles something that you might be able to relate to. We're talking Helmand province and different places like Kajaki. I was my first deployment. I was in Kajaki, and it's quite rural, quite remote. So the people that live there are obviously vastly different. They don't have the same things that we know and recognise. I suppose here in the UK, it is a different world, a different planet almost.
and those people, because they're obviously very different from people from Kabul or like any other city within Afghanistan as well. Did you find like those people are kind of indifferent to the conflict that is going on between the Taliban, the Afghanistani government, UK, US? They're a bit indifferent to all of it, even though they sort of understand, but they are indifferent to it. Did you find that, or is that just like, because I heard from some people in Afghanistan that they didn't care either way.
Well, I think that they, are probably indifferent because they're so desensitized from
Mm,
conflict. There's been conflict there for decades,
mm,
and that will remain the case. I'm sure it's just part of the fabric there. It seems to be that So when they see a new uniform, a new different face or whatever, it's a different flag on a shirt or something. To them it's just more of the same. It's
mm.
a
Just a
especially in
new
some
face to the same thing.
yeah, it's just a Tuesday afternoon in some cases for a lot of them, and
Very
it
hard
probably
to
will.
understand for people over here, isn't it?
Well, we've seen, especially in the UK, we've not really seen any kind of
Mm,
conflict against us really on especially on UK soil really since
mm,
the World Wars. So we don't understand that, and that's probably why you see so much support from crazy organisations like Queers for Palestine or something
mm.
like that. Because if they was to go there, then it
Yeah,
obviously wouldn't be
they
such a
really
pleasant
don't get it.
experience for them. No, and that's because we grow up in a very safe bubble where we don't understand the conflict, so we can have people feel like they have such virtuous views because they're not in that state of conflict. They don't understand, I
Mm,
suppose, what it is to walk in the shoes of the people that are in Afghanistan, as you say, right? So
mm.
that for those people, as I said, it's Tuesday afternoon. They're
Yeah.
used to people coming over with Kalashnikovs and
Mm, mm,
setting up roadblocks to deter whoever else from coming in or to
mm.
move their RPGs around or whatever else it is that they're up to. For them, it's a way of life. But for us,
Yeah,
we can't relate to that, and a lot of people can't relate to that.
yeah. So what made you leave and then join? Oh, you said you were. Where did you join after that?
After that, I did sort of maritime security. It's called.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so tell us like why did you leave and how was it like? What was the differences, different things that you found in maritime security and like what is maritime security for people who actually don't know,
Yeah, of
including
course.
myself?
So doing that really was me weaning myself off of military life because it
Mm,
was a transitional period. You work with the company that I worked for predominantly or exclusively almost employed ex-war Marines. So it was a way of me sort of half becoming a civilian
mm,
whilst keeping my foot in with some like-minded people and things like
mm,
that. I left really because around that time I'd had a daughter. I was deploying a lot and things like that. And I sort of thought to myself that, if I wanted to get a career
mm.
somewhere else, then it would be a
That might
good
have been
time
the
to sort of
time, yeah.
leave now. I'd
mm,
achieved everything that I'd wanted to achieve when I set out joining. So I
mm,
thought I'm sort of at the turning point now, whether I make a career of this in the Marines, or I sort of go a different way and look for a career elsewhere. And obviously, I decided that I'd achieved everything I wanted to do. I can probably leave and look at maybe trying a career somewhere else.
mm. So how was it? How did you find, like, what are the things that you did in maritime security? But like, were you going on ships and providing them security over there, or was it the security of the cargo or the warehouses? Like, what was it?
So I suppose at the time there was probably more news about Somali pirates, you
I
know,
was thinking about that.
um, hijacking cargo vessels, container
Yeah.
vessels, things like that. So the idea is that you could take over one of these vessels. It's got, there's obviously a lot of money in shipping, whether
Mm,
that is the cargo itself or the vessel, because the vessel needs to get to a port at a certain time. The
mm,
the shipping companies have paid money for millions and millions for that vessel to go to the next port to
mm,
pick up the next cargo, and if they miss that slot, then they're going to probably have to pay a lot in what's called
yeah.
demurrage charges to sit offshore before they can find
Mm,
another slot to go in the port to pick up cargo that's now late, and all that's shipping is a big money. So the pirates essentially they're opportunists.
mm,
They'd be like fishermen. You
mm,
get too close if they come out too far. They see a vessel coming along, and they'll just put their nets down
mm,
and come alongside the vessel and try and board it.
mm,
And for a lot of times that works. And if they board a vessel, they can take control of it and they can just hold it up for a ransom of millions, and then the companies will likely pay that because they just need the vessel to get to where it needs to get to,
mm,
and they'll do that quite quickly in a lot of cases. So they're opportunistics really. So my role was I would join a number of different areas. Suez, we could join at Suez, follow it, board the vessel in Suez, follow it down the Red Sea. You could go all the way down to South Africa or Mauritius, or across to the sort of Persian Gulf, or we would disembark in Sri Lanka. So anywhere around that sort of area, we'd be bouncing around from.
So,
Um,
like, they would call out a distress call or something, and you would respond to it rather than being actively on those vessels.
no, no, we'd be on the vessels. So
Okay.
essentially, most vessels, especially the bigger vessels, it was better for them for insurance reasons. They needed to, and also because there's a real threat. They would employ a security company to provide security in what they called the high risk area,
Hmm.
which was the area that I described. From
Okay.
those
So
territories.
they won't have you at the point of when they leave, but as they're entering those high risk areas, you would join them.
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
Okay.
that's right.
Okay,
Yeah,
that
so
makes sense.
we would join, follow the vessel. If it's going from Suez to
Hmm.
Singapore, we would join it all the way, get off in Sri Lanka, and
Yeah,
then sort of spend a few
basically a
days in Sri
security
Lanka. And,
escort that you're
you know,
giving them.
yeah, exactly that. But we'd do it on board.
Hmm.
Some of the times they do like surveys. I remember it must have been. I think there was a World Cup in 2014, maybe. I'm not
Hmm.
sure. But I remember being on board a vessel that was off the coast of Seychelles, and we were doing an oil and gas survey. So I
Hmm.
was one of the. So when you do an oil and gas survey, you've got the main vessel that's dragging the cables, that's doing the survey, and then you've got four chase vessels, and the
Hmm.
idea is to stop fishing vessels really kind of cutting the cables across and things like
Hmm.
that. So we did a few of those as well. It was interesting, but at the same time, predominantly 99% of it is you're sitting on a boat in the
Just
middle of nowhere. No, not necessarily, probably almost certainly won't have any internet
yeah.
connection to the outside world. And you look out and there's just big blue everywhere. So there's not really much to sort of do. It was good for losing the pounds. It was like enforced fat camp for me. So no
Yeah.
biscuits or things like that. But otherwise it have some nice pictures of a hotel that you might stay in for a day or two. But
Yeah.
otherwise.
Would the Somalian pirates or other people know that you're on board, like, as a deterrent, that they don't even try to engage with those ships? Like, would they know it, and how would they know it?
Yeah, it's a good question. So really, if you're a big container vessel, you're
Mm,
probably going to go, 20 knots or whatever. So you're at a reasonable pace. and the sides of the vessels are huge. These vessels are monsters. To try to climb them, you almost are going to fail most of the time anyway.
Yeah.
So for them to even attempt it is really something. But if you have security on board, I think it's quite clear, because you can
It's
see
visible.
different security measures that have been put in place.
Mm.
Maybe we'd get the ship's crew to put out, razor wire around the edges. We'd
Mm.
get them to put the hoses from the ships at different locations. So if we did notice, because part of our job is to stay on the bridge, have a 24-hour presence on the bridge. It's one of the security team,
Yeah.
sort of looking out, observing if there's any vessels coming a bit too close. If any vessels do come close and they're making clear direct passage towards us, then we would turn on the hoses. That sort of lets them know that
Mm.
there's somebody here. And if you could imagine climbing, 20 foot with a rickety ladder on the board of
Mm.
the side of a vessel going 20 odd knots, and the hoses start coming on as well, you're probably not going to be happy with that. But
Yeah.
we were armed guards, so we actually had, different types of weapons, whether that's an AK variant or a Pinelli Argo or
Mm.
something like that. And the idea would be, if they're making clear approach, that we're clearly under threat, we can PID that they're there, that they've got ladders on board, that they've got AKs or weapons and stuff like that. Then we can fire warning shots down to let them know that there's security on board. And they always disappear as soon as they actually see there's any sort of security measures. They
Yeah.
always would go.
But
Yeah.
you could engage with them fatally as well, like if you wanted to, if the threat was demanded
Yeah,
that.
I mean, it becomes very, very, so the rules of engagement around this are very strict, very strict. I mean, everyone has an inherent right to self-defense, and essentially
Mm.
that's what that would be. If you can see that there's no alternative other
Mm.
than to take sort of, that kind of lethal action, then, you need to be, sure, but you also need to evidence that as well. So
Mm.
there's recording devices. There was very strict guidelines in terms of how to engage and things like that. But essentially, it'd all be about deterring them, and you can successfully deter them. I mean, no one in their right mind is going to want to climb that vessel, especially with any safety and security measures in place. Especially with security. I mean, these guys did know they're opportunistics.
Mm.
They would go for a vessel if they felt like they could get there. But to be honest with you, when it's got security on board, they're going to fail every time. And even if they did get on board, we had procedures in place that meant that they couldn't actually take control of the vessel anyway. So there was no hope for them. So they would just never
So
attempt it, really, in my experience.
did you have any incidents, and if you did, how many incidents did you have of, like, someone trying to board?
Yeah. To be honest with you, I didn't really have that many. I'm
Mm.
quite fortunate and quite happy with that. We had a couple of, probably about 3 times in my experience. I mean, I did it for maybe a couple of years. So,
Okay.
but when I say a couple of years, you could be on a vessel for a month, and I could
Mm.
probably work for about 6 or 7 months, 8 months, because you go away and then you come back again. It's not
Mm.
like you're just out there constantly. So you
Yeah.
could go away for a month and then come home for a couple of weeks, and then go out there for 3 weeks, come back for a week. So it's irregular in that sense. So all in all, I'm probably out of the country for, I don't know, 8 months or something like that.
Mm.
But in doing that, there's certain areas within the high risk area that are going to be more likely than others to receive some kind of a threat. If you're going to be in literally sort of, I suppose, where we may come onto within our discussions, where the Diego Garcia, or you've got the sort of Chagos
Mm.
side of things. Well, that's in the middle of the high risk area as well, but we're not
Yeah.
going to see anybody there because it's so
Mm.
many nautical miles away from the coast of Africa, where we see a lot
Yeah.
more of this
Yeah.
sort of piracy threat.
Yeah.
Then so
I
it's
mean, because like the piracy that is happening around Somalia and stuff like that as well. They're doing criminal actions, but they're also poor, so they don't have that much resources to actually go out that further away from the coast, isn't it? Like to actually do those
yeah,
things. Yeah.
and the vessels they're in are obviously small fishing vessels.
Yeah.
So if they can't get a vessel, they want to catch some fish to go back and sell it at the
Yeah.
market. So
Yeah.
they don't want to go that far out, because
Mm.
then
Yeah.
they need to take more resources than they've got. Plus, also, I mean, one of the vessels I did, I remember, wasn't a big container one; it was a smaller vessel.
Hmm.
And I remember being on it, and I was actually I was in Kenya, I think, and we were leaving, and I thought, okay, this isn't too bad. It's a very small vessel. I'm used to the big containers. This one was a very small one, and I was thinking, well, I was worried it was going to be rolling around a fair bit, and it was actually quite static in where we was. So then, when we actually left the sort of harbour area, went out into the open sea, it was going all over the place. So as you can imagine, right, being on one of the vessels that the pirates might be on,
Yeah.
for days, they're much smaller than that small vessel I'm talking about was on. They're going to have a very bad time for a very long time. So they're going to want to avoid that, I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay. So from there to the world of finance, uh, why like why did you enter politics from like because your finance what was your finance job you said the
So yeah, the financial software firm essentially, so
Hmm.
Fintech. It
Okay,
was
yeah. Hmm.
well, very massive career change.
Hmm.
180-degree turn from what I was. But I just sort of fancied really sort of a bit of a change, a bit more of a
Hmm.
stability from going
Hmm.
away. That kind of thing. I'd known somebody, a friend of a friend, that basically had said that he was looking for help as a systems analyst, essentially.
Hmm.
Um, so I sort of met up with him and talked through a few things. He showed me a couple of stuff, and then that's how I sort of got my foot in the
Hmm.
door. He's sort of bottom of the ladder.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, I left that company. It was a trading firm essentially that were needing somebody to. They use software to manage their risk and exposure, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I had to sort of learn that industry instantly,
Hmm.
and then sort of help out with I suppose system related issues that they had.
Hmm.
I left that company and then started working for another company, which has been acquired by a very large group that sort of owns a big market share of
Hmm.
the entire industry. And I do the sort of same thing now, but I've managed to sort of do quite well in terms of the sort of progress and
Hmm.
promotions and things like that. So it's a very different
Yeah.
world. But
Yeah.
essentially, it's what I set out to achieve once I decided to leave the Marines. I've got
Yeah.
a few kids, so I wanted to make sure that I was you know one, providing for them, two, being
Hmm.
around. It's no good me sort of
Yeah.
gallivanting around
Yeah.
Suez and Sri Lanka and places like that. It's much better to be home and seeing them.
What made you go into politics? Because you stood as candidate for reform, isn't that right? So tell
Yes,
us
yeah.
like why you went into politics and then what happened with reform.
Yeah, okay. So I've always been politically interested. I've always sort of, I suppose, followed politics quite closely, and you know, essentially more and more got frustrated, and probably shouting at the TV more than I would have in the past. And it was, I suppose my wife sort of said, well, maybe you should become a bit more, you care deeply about this,
Mm.
why don't you, be more involved, try to be constructive in shifting the paradigm and shifting the conversation and stuff like that. So I sort of half reluctantly, half interestingly decided that I would do that. And I went to an event. Actually, it was in Kent. I mentioned this. Actually, we'll get on to Advance, I'm sure. But
Mm.
I recently told this story at an Advance UK did their first event actually, and I was privileged enough to talk then, be one of the speakers. So I sort of told this story, and I said that I went and saw an event in Kent, and the main speaker, I suppose, was Ben Habib. And I listened to him speak, and as I did, I sort of thought, well, I was interested, and I wanted to get involved as I described, but I felt sort of more motivated when I heard him speak to actually
Mm.
be involved and actually go out there and do that. Because to be honest with you, it's quite a lot to put your head above the parapet, as I'm sure you know, with
Mm.
doing your podcasts and your talks and discussions that
Mm.
you do. You lay your views out there, and anyone sitting on an
Yeah.
armchair can be critical. They can say whatever they want behind their keyboard, and they can criticize you for anything. But to actually get out there and I will, I give respect to anyone that does that, whether I agree with their opinions,
Mm.
motivations, or whatever. Putting yourself out there is really something. So I listened to Ben, and a lot of what he said is remain consistent. And essentially, the core sort of principles behind that is that he sees things. And I spoke to him at that event. I had to queue because he was being swamped by people, he essentially told me, really, anything that you sort of think your core guiding beliefs is really just about what's right for the United Kingdom. Take political emotions out of it and use that as your philosophy, then you'll always come to the same conclusions with things. And it was really just motivating to sort of hear him. So I did. I got involved. I actually stood as a local election candidate as well before anyone really knew who Reform was. I knocked on doors, handed out leaflets, things like that, completely outside my comfort zone for what I was at the time, and advocated for the party that actually Ben was building at that time. I then stood as a candidate for Braintree constituency. That's basically where I live, and I hosted an event there just before. I mean, I did an event because I was the respective parliamentary candidate at the time, so I set something up and I wrote Ben in to come and be a speaker for me, and it just so happened that Rishi Sunak went out in the rain and decided to call a general election early.
Yeah.
And it happened to be that my event ended up being about 4 days before the general election. So it was well timed for me. And we did well, especially in Essex. Reform did well at the time there.
Yeah.
And
for people who don't know, like Whittam falls under the Braintree district, anyways.
Braintree
Yeah.
district it falls under, but obviously Whittam is its own constituency.
Yeah.
There was a candidate for Whittam, but I go into Braintree quite a lot. Do a lot in Braintree, so it was still home for me. So I thought I would stand there. It seemed appropriate. And then after the general election, I stayed on. I formed the Braintree branch for Reform there as well. And for a time it was okay. Obviously, Nigel came at the 11th hour to stand in Clacton, unseating the chap that was there. And I didn't really know. Obviously, I knew about the Nigel's involvement with the Brexit, but we wouldn't have got a referendum essentially without his sort of activism and campaigning for it and that kind of stuff. But and he was a sort of well-known figure. He was a massive Marmite figure on the doorsteps, but nevertheless he sort of joined, and we had the election, got the result that we got. Like I said, I stayed on. I built the branch, and lots of active members, fantastic people, really, that give up their time, weekends and make donations, come to the meetings to listen in and to be involved. And for them, they're remarkable people, and they remain so. I remain in contact with many of them. We can have debates about politics and the way that I see things and the way they see things, and it's great. And you should be able to have the sort of open discussion about that, with people. But since then, I think that there was a number of things happening behind the scenes for me that I wasn't really happy with. I was aware that people were being made to sign NDAs. There was people being ejected from the party that were being sort of almost, I have to be careful, I suppose, my language, but I won't go as far as to say slandered, but they were definitely being targeted very derogatively and very negatively. And no information was being provided as to why these people are being sort of removed.
It's kind of like the same as what you would expect from the left, right? So that is what I found as well. Like their tactics are still similar, where you're always under threat. Like, oh, if I say something wrong, if I do something wrong, then there's no chance that like I'll be ejected, and they'll use whatever means necessary, like what they done to Ben Habib, what they done to Rupert Lowe, what they done to Howard Cox, and other people as well. Like it's just.
And what they did to Ben Habib, Rupert Lowe, Howard Cox, they've done to countless people, genuinely, and I know that. I've done I've tried my hand, as humble as that may be, as doing some sessions with a couple of the branch chairs and people that I know that have also stood as candidates and given a lot to the party as branch chairs and things like that. And as soon as they have said something on social media, and we're not talking out there, we're not talking extreme views. If they had mentioned, for example, Tommy Robinson being a political prisoner, which you can say that. You're not saying that, oh, I love Tommy Robinson. You're saying that Tommy Robinson's a political prisoner, he'll be kicked out. And Howard Cox really sort of demonstrates that, and he speaks about that quite a lot because it's important. You need to be able to come out and say
Yeah.
that. I mean, they lump the sort of Tommy Robinson supporters as that
Mm.
lot for a
Yeah.
start, right? So they don't appreciate people, branch chairs or branch officers or anybody really having any political opinion. I
Mm.
remember just before I left Reform, there was a group of people that came to the meeting, and it was the time when the farmers' tax was really sort of causing problems, and the farmers were coming to London, they were protesting, and a lot of the people in Braintree were rural farm workers, farm owners, and they were saying, look, we could get on this because I know Terry down the street, I know this guy and that guy in this
Mm.
farm. We can make our own protest in this locally
Yeah.
because there's a lot of appetite for it. It's a big issue for them. And it
Mm.
was very difficult because you walk in a fine line between saying, yeah, I completely agree with you. Yes, let's do
Yeah.
it. The activist in me says, yes, I think that's absolutely right. What this Labour government is doing is very vindictive. Their
Mm.
policies are very vindictive,
Yeah.
They're targeting people. So that's what I think we should do. It's what speaks to the local residents,
Mm.
local constituents. It's an issue that I agree with and something that we should champion. But we was told that we can't be doing that. We exist as the branch to ask for donations, ask for fundraising, and get leaflets and put the leaflets through doors. And that's the involvement that they want. They don't want people to have any views. They don't want freedom of speech. If you go outside of that, they'll just eject you. And a lot of the time, they don't even tell people that they're now been kicked out of the party. There's people that have given a lot, and then all of a sudden communication goes dark, and that's that. There's other people,
Mm.
like some of the people I know that have just been told that oh yeah, something that you said on social media, not oh it's this,
Yeah.
it's an excuse essentially because there wasn't anything, but they're giving them something to sort of go away. But for me, I found my, I suppose, activism or my main sort of way of getting my point across as writing. I write predominantly I suppose comment pieces, opinion pieces for the Express.
Mm.
If I'm angry at something, I normally sort of sit down and type away until I put something down and then send it over to them, and if they like it, they play it. But I mean, what I wrote was about the Great British Pact. So it was I
Mm.
don't know if you know Great British Pact. Obviously, it's chaired by Ben Habib, and it was really at the time when that had come into existence. So it was a very neutral piece. It wasn't in support
Mm.
of Ben or negative about Ben or anything like that. It was basically just, and it wasn't even really about Ben. It was about the Great British Pact and what that meant for British politics, what it could mean for
Mm.
British politics. It's very interesting to have something like that be set up. What is it going to do, and is it how effective and efficient is it going to
Mm.
be at driving change? And because it had obviously mentioned that he was in that, and I'd done about 20 or so articles at this point. I got a phone call to say, "Oh, you've done a press release," and I said, "Well, no, I've not done a press release. That to me, that sounds like I've set up the cameras and
Yeah.
called the papers to come over and GB News and whoever else to listen to my announcement. I've just done a comment piece, comment article." So they said, "Oh no, we can't have that. You've mentioned one of our detractors," and they said basically, "Yeah, we need to suspend you pending investigation." So they did that, and after a few weeks, they asked me. They said, "Look, we're going to get through the local elections, and then we'll reinstate you as the branch chair." Which I just obviously had respectfully declined. I said, "No,
Yeah.
thank you. It's not for me. I'm not going to make a big song and dance, having go at them for lack of freedom of speech or anything like that.
Mm.
I didn't break any rules that were in any rule books that they put out there, which were very draconian in their own nature. But I didn't do any of that. I just said, no, it's not for me. Because after my suspension and everything else, obviously everything that had happened with Rupert Lowe was happening at the same time. And then there was a lot of other people that I know that had been ejected from
Mm.
the party for bad reasons. So for me, my understanding of it is Reform has sort of come out of the Brexit Party, was rebranded, and didn't have Nigel, and it was being guided and shaped by a lot of influence from Ben. And I think that it stood for something. It had a clear, I suppose, beliefs in what it stood for. and they wanted to desperately move away from that. They wanted to move to a centralist position, and move as more left as they can to scoop up as much of it, because it stopped being about what it was about initially and started being about a vehicle to bring about essentially Zia Youssef and Nigel Farage into power,
Yeah.
which is why you don't have anyone around them.
And
Um,
it's really disappointing to see that. I mean, um, people in Essex need to know about this more and more, because for a while, like, we were supporting reform in 2024 as well, even though I was saying it from the start, like from before. As soon as Nigel came in, I was like, well, this is not going to deliver what you thought it was going to deliver. But people were not in the mood of listening at that time, right? So I got a lot of backlash for saying you should not
mm,
vote for reform. You rather, it would be better to vote for Tories, right? In Essex, and in Essex, people should know, like, we have had conservatives for a very long time.
mm,
Conservatives are there in very safe seats. The leader of the party, current leader of the party, is from Saffron Bolton as well. Like, she stands
yeah,
from that area, right? So I was in Malden at that time as well, and there was no canvassing done by Reform Party in Malden. The people in Malden were ready to sort of like vote for reform, but there was no canvassing done for that. The candidate that they had for Malden as well was from somewhere else. I think so, from Southend or somewhere, like where she lived. She wasn't from the area, right? And the MP for Malden was a conservative a guy. I forgot his name, but he's been there for like 40 years. As
yeah,
the constituency has changed over time, he's still been there in, like, the MP for there. So he got elected again, right? Because so the opportunity was there. They didn't do anything about it. And the reason why the people in Essex would have voted for reform and did vote Nigel Farage in as well was for the things that against the things that he seems pro now, like, he seems pro censoring people. He seems pro, like, being a bit more authoritarian in the party. He seems pro being a bit too lefty, bit too liberal with his
yeah.
economics and his cultural thing as well, like, because he doesn't care about the demographic changes and stuff like that. And people in Essex are actually really concerned about that, because we've seen the brunt of the Boris wave, right? So for a lot of people, it might seem weird for them to see me talking about the demographic change, right? But I do worry about that as well, because I came to England for England, right? So, but we've seen the brunt of it. What's happened with so many South Indians moving into Essex right now? Don't have a problem with, you know individual South Indians or whatever, but when you bring a certain number of people in such block, moves, it creates issues, right? And since COVID as well, like all the people from London moving over here, and not the good part of London coming over here, we have seen a lot of social housing being moved into Essex as well, through the back door without people knowing about it. London actually opening their social housing over here, and they're sending in
Yeah.
basically immigrants over here, right? So we already, people had this problem, right? And now it sort of seems like, for a lot of people, that who do we vote for then, because we don't have an option, right? What do you like? What do you feel? What is the mood of the people in Essex, especially in Witham and stuff? Because I know, like, in Witham, people are very pro-conservative, but not pro-conservative party as such, but as in socially conservative, right? What do you feel, that do people feel betrayed by reform in Essex in general, or are they still like, have they still drunk the Kool-Aid for reform?
It's a mixed bag, really. I think that there's been a massive change since the general election in terms, I mean, people were, very tribal in their voting habits, even up to the general election. I mean, I know that Reform got over 4 million votes, but still, especially around Essex, which is, I suppose, a strong sort of conservative area that you would have thought that they would be able to target. At the time of the general election, people were just, oh, well, I always vote Conservative. I'm going to vote
Mm,
Conservative. Now that, I think that the discontent has really sort of seeped
mm,
in. They're just really sort of fed up. I mean, I think Kemi Badenoch actually recently said something along the lines of that, you know, she's got a lot of work to do with the party, but don't count us out yet. We've not opened up the shop yet, or something like that.
Mm.
And you sort of think, you know, get on with it and open up
Yeah.
the shop then, because your party's, you're drowning. But people, you know, the whole mindset has changed with their voting habits, and we find ourselves in uncharted water in that sense, because you know we don't necessarily know where people will land with things at the moment. Well, the way it lands is Reform are laughing really at everybody, the electorate especially, because they've
Mm.
got a monopoly on discontent. They've got an
Yeah.
absolute monopoly on discontent. They know that people are fed up with Conservatives, fed up with Labour, and they are fully going after the sort of, you know, centralist and votes. And even the sort of director, Dr. David Ball, has described
Mm.
the Reform as a centralist party. Nigel goes on and says, like you said, he doesn't care about the rate of demographic change, doesn't want to alienate Islam, and that he's left of the population on immigration itself. So they're really targeting sort of left-leaning people, I suppose. So the people of Essex that I sort of interact with and speak to, like I said, it's a mixed bag. You've got a lot of people that see it for what it is, and they say, "Oh, well, you know." Few months ago, they were saying, "Oh, I see the big chinks in the armor of reform." This was before, there was talk of Advance UK, because obviously that's
Mm.
gaining a lot of traction at the moment. But what I would say the biggest problem is that they still have that monopoly on discontent. They're still laughing at everyone. They know they don't have to really deliver. And my view is that, you've got the Uni Party, which is obviously Conservatives and the Labour. Reform aren't looking to change that. They're not looking to
Oh, they
change the game. They're not
become
looking to
part of
break
it.
the establishment. They're looking to amalgamate the
Mm.
Uni Party. That's why they're bringing over Jake Berry,
Yeah.
who's all about net
Yeah.
zero, and
Mm.
that's why they're bringing in people like Labour councillors, Lib Dem councillors, things like that. They're looking to absorb as much of that as they can, so that people say, "Oh, well, it's something different. I'm fed up of voting
Mm.
for the same two parties, so I'm just going to try a new party. Maybe there'll be something different." But essentially, it'll be the same party, just dressed up differently. And they're looking to sort of capitalise on the discontent by forming a centralist party that will then just be able to sort of destroy both Labour and Conservatives, and no one stand against them,
Yeah,
because
and
that's
I think
just the
so.
landscape.
I would say, like a major thing that people in Essex need to look at, and this perspective they need to have. Look at what's happening in Epping, right? The troubles that are happening, Epping, the recent email that has been sent around by the county council as well. All of these things are happening. All of the problems that have had been happening for a very long time, like I was saying, the social housing being moved from London into Essex, which is now being stopped, but the damage is already done. you know there's so many issues. There are hidden issues that people in locally would know in different areas and stuff, right? Areas of like names that people don't even know about, but obviously us in Essex would know about, right? All of these are going on while the leader of the Conservative Party is from this area. It still is going on over here. The leader of the so-called insurgent party, Reform Party, has won his seat from this county. Still, it's going on over here. So, if these people, if the Conservatives and Reforms don't even know or don't even care what happens in their backyard, you know then there's absolutely no hope. So people should see this now. It's been a year now. What has Nigel Farage said in Parliament that has touched upon any of the issues that are directly concerning Essex? Absolutely
Yeah,
zero, absolutely nothing. So we actually need people like, look at Rupert Lowe. He's actually doing something for his constituency in Norwich, right? Farage has done nothing. So people need to see this. We need actually people who care about Essex, and no matter which party they're from, they can be independent or whatnot. But I think so. If when we register Advance UK, right? I think so. A good presence of Advance UK will be well received in Essex, because people over here are looking for something that represents them. That is not, like you said as well, the figure of Raj is actually Marmite still. in Essex, because people
Mm.
generally just don't like him, how he puts himself across, right? They don't like just populist people, even though they like people like they love successful people, right? So they love they love Trump a lot, in people in
Yeah.
Essex, right? And they love people like Tommy Robinson as well. And I think so there's also a reason why people in Essex are not like, they support Reform Party as such. They have given the seat to Nigel Farage because, in a way, they had to give that to him because they were voting for Reform. They weren't voting for Farage as such, but they don't like this negative intent towards Tommy Robinson, and towards working class people, and towards, like, and adding liberals, like, they see this, the whole problem in Essex is because of the liberal elites coming from London past 5 years, going into our local services and stuff, and they're now the heads of the services since COVID. Since the London liberals have come over here, that's when we have started having DEI departments and stuff in all the local authorities and places like that. It wasn't there before, right? We see these problems, and then Farage cozies up to those same people. So really,
Yeah.
if these two people, if these two leaders of the so-called, like, fight back, don't don't even care about what happens in the backyard, then what's the point of them, to be honest?
Well, it's not been their agenda. It's not been on their priority list. Their priority is to, like I said, appeal to the sort of centralist, lefties. That's what they're going after. Their whole agenda isn't about having a motivation and a drive to do what's right for the country. It's about how do we get into power.
Hmm.
That's been their objective, and that's clearly evident that that's their objective, because they've not said anything about what we would consider to be their sort of base, what they were hard on, which was sort of immigration stance, because they didn't give anything out on immigration until recently, and they would very begrudgingly did that, because that was clearly not their plan. They were brought there because kicking and screaming because of the activisms of Rupert Lowe, Restore Britain, Ben Habib, Advance UK, coming out and saying action needs to happen, and there being a big public outcry about it. These people, like I just mentioned, have got a platform, and they get a lot of support from people. So then they have to throw out some sort of put together policies. And let's remind everybody that back in April, they said in May we'll release our deportation plan. So vote for us.
Hmm.
Yeah. So that was to entice everybody to vote for them at the local elections, to hoodwink them to thinking, oh, we'll give them our vote because they said they're going to do something, and they didn't deliver that. And then eventually, was it last week or so, they delivered the deportation, 3.5 pages. So it's not like and also, oh, we'll do that maybe, possibly, if we remember, when we get in 4 or 5 years' time. What about now? What about
Yeah.
lobbying for some changes now? Like you said, with Epping, with what's happening, they're all well and good to make political capital out of it, and to sort of, retweet certain things from head office's stance and some picture that they've put on there. But there's no calling for any action. There's no clear, plan to pressure Labour into doing anything about it. And we've just seen that the actual people, the sort of mums, the pink ladies that were there, sort of campaigning for change, and all of the protesters that were there, they managed to get that ruling to say that migrants need to leave, only to then be reinstated by another activist judge.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
clearly
I
there's
haven't heard
massive,
anything
massive.
from Farage about it. I haven't heard, like, this is happening in your backyard. Like, where is your voice? Why are you not there yourself campaigning? Like, what is going on? Like, they're only there after the event, after the effect, but still, there's not enough pressure. And it's sort of, even if conservatives are coming over here, well, these policies were set up. These things happen while they were in power. They're just taking Essex for granted, and just like conservatives did, Farage is doing the same. He's taking the Reform Party under Farage is taking Essex for granted again and again. We just an extension of London to them, right? So,
Yeah.
and this is going on too much now, because I'm seeing the increase of, like, the activities in the local mosque going a bit high. I'm seeing these, they're setting up these stalls that Jesus was a Muslim, and those things like that, right? Antagonizing the locals, right? And this is going. I'm seeing that increase in numbers in the mosque goers in Malden as well, in other places as well, right? So we can project where this is going to lead to, but they don't care. They don't care about these things because they don't want to be called racist, right?
Yeah.
But this is going to affect Essex.
No, hugely. I mean, it already is. It has, and that's why, like you said, there needs to be action now.
Mm,
And one of the shortcomings and shortfalls rather of their deportation plan was that they're not even ambitious in what they want to achieve. It falls far too short. And it goes back to what we mentioned earlier about Farage not being bothered about the rate of demographic change. I think there was a report by Matt Goodwin that had suggested by 2050 or something like that white British would be the minority and it would be a
yeah,
Muslim majority.
and it won't be
And
England then.
yeah, and Farage wasn't bothered with
Yeah,
that. He wasn't fussed. He didn't think that was going to be an issue. And Richard Tice even said that he's not even going to be here. So these
yeah,
people, they don't care. And I mean this, and I mean this to reach the nicest people that I met campaigning, that I know are the grassroots sort of heart and soul behind reform at the moment and will be for Advance, because they're well-meaning, patriotic, decent, caring people that care deeply about the country, especially, I obviously from Essex,
mm,
my heart and soul is in Essex. I've grown up here and things like that. So I know exactly how they feel seeing their sort of,
mm,
corner of the world, drastically change,
yeah,
before their eyes. So I mean this to them when I say that, the whole objective for Reform UK is to get into power at any cost. It does
yeah,
not matter what issue they champion. It will
mm,
change with the wind as long as that achieves their aim of getting into power. And for anyone that says, well, they'll get into power because you've got to get into power to enact what it is you want to do, you can't do that unless you've set out clearly in your manifesto what
yeah,
it is that you're going to do.
mm,
Otherwise, you'll find that you'll be blocked every turn at
yeah,
trying to do that, whether that be in Parliament, whether that be in the House of Lords, because
yeah,
every bill has to go through there. You'll be blocked. Well, it's not part of your and the establishment and the blob.
mm,
They're all against it. So you need to be
yeah,
very clear. You need to have a mandate to deliver what you're going to deliver. If you go in there by saying we're not going to deliver this, that, and the other, which is obviously combating that rate of demographic change and talking about mass deportations and things like that. If you go in there not saying you're going to do that and then try and do it, you won't be able to.
yeah.
And
You'll be
maybe
blocked.
maybe that's his plan. Maybe that's his plan to
I
go
think so.
to
That is
not
his
deliver
plan
on that,
because
then
then
say, oh well, I tried
exactly,
the blob.
exactly.
These people over here, and
Yeah.
it's like the politicians of when we was in the EU, they'd always blame the EU. Oh, we
Mm,
can't do it, it's the EU. Now it's the blob. Now it's the House of Lords and things
yeah.
like that. There's always a buck to be passed,
Yeah,
shoulders to be
well, that's how
sloped.
he
To
gained. That's how he gained his popularity by not doing anything, but like by seeming that he's doing something, right? Oh, it's like is that enemy? Oh, I can't defeat him. Like, but when you have the chance, even when the enemy is down, he wants to prop up the enemy so that it blocks him, so it stops him from actually doing the thing that's needed.
Yeah, and what's the interesting as well is that he doesn't need to be having that view. He doesn't need to be
Mm,
pandering to the left. He doesn't
yeah,
need to be sort of cozying up to the establishment, and doing it. He needs to just be fearless and courageous and say,
yeah,
"This is what we're going to do." Because obviously that's why Advance is born. Because there's
yeah,
nobody there championing the cause of what's
mm,
actually needed, and the public are there. The public are right on
yeah,
there as well. The most salient issue is the rate of demographic change. It's immigration,
yeah,
legal and illegal.
mm,
And that impacts
yeah,
everything else. Everything, unless you tackle that and deal with it
mm,
properly, the issue will always be there. Unless you say what you're going to do and intend on delivering it, then otherwise you won't be able to deliver it. And it's
yeah,
irrelevant who's in power then, whether it's Labour, Reform, Tories, or whoever. They're not going to deliver, and then pretend it's not their fault. That's not good enough.
mm,
For,
mm,
for a very long time in British politics, we always aim low. We
mm,
always say, oh, well, this is the best of a bad bunch. I'll vote
yeah,
for them.
yeah,
That's not good enough.
yeah,
We have a system now. It's a lot more fluid. We've got people that are voting
yeah,
outside of their tribal voting patterns. We need to be able to say, look, I'm going to vote for this person because I believe they're going to deliver it. And I don't think anyone can say with confidence that they believe that Reform and Farage and Youssef are going to deliver on that, because
No,
they're not saying that they're going to deliver on
no.
anything. You
And
know,
that's the thing, like you said, they don't really need to pander to the left, right? They don't need to pander to the liberals. So if he is doing it, that sort of shows me that he actually believes in those liberal ideas and stuff, right? That's why he's doing it, right? He doesn't need, he can actually go towards, it's just saying just that you will only deal with illegal migration. A means that you do not understand the problems of immigration in this country, and B is the bare minimum. Even labor are saying it, that they're going to deal with illegal, they're going to smash the gangs or whatever there might be, right? Even
yeah,
they are saying it, at least, right? Doesn't matter if they were going to do it or not, but they're saying it. So if you're just going to match what labor is saying, that's not good enough. Those illegal migrants are coming in, especially when you have seen this in active duty as well. Especially these people who are determined Islamists, right? So, and they have this mindset. Death to them is actually desirable, right? So they are from that mindset. These people, illegal ones that are coming in my point of view, these are not the leaders that are coming over here. These are basically the foot soldiers, right? And their leaders are already over here, right? And those are the legal migrants and stuff. From, like, they could be, you have seen with what happened with the second and third generation and fourth generation who went to fight for ISIS as well, right? So there's a reason for it. If we are not willing to take that further step from illegal migration and looking at what are the legal problems with the legal migration as well, what people who are the legal migrants, what situation they create as well, what blockages that they're creating us, if you're not willing to at least have that conversation, we're not going to solve the problem of, like,
no.
of anything, or even illegal migration, or any migration, or especially of demographic change. And that is very important to fix. Otherwise, England and Britain will not be Britain anymore.
No, it won't. I mean, I talk about this a lot, really, because it's the issue that sort of gets me, I suppose, most motivated to be active politically. I often say, any of the sort of talks I do as a former, soldier, when we on Armistice Day, we have that, that saying that says that it's from a poem, and it says that when you go home, tell them of us, how
Mm,
we gave our tomorrow for your today.
yeah.
And I think about that a lot, because uh, that sacrifice that was made
Mm,
is huge. It's significant, and there's a burden, and a privileged burden that we have to live up to that. It's very important that we live up to that, and we're just not doing it. We're
mm,
not doing it because our country is completely changing before our eyes.
mm,
And it's almost like I can't imagine those people, how they would feel looking at, and I think there's actually a video that's circling around on X at the moment, that shows a World War II veteran,
mm,
saying that. He says that's why we've got people that won't join the forces. If there was a war today,
yeah.
they wouldn't want to go and fight, because
Mm,
our institutions even tell
yeah.
them that they should be feeling ashamed of
Yeah.
our heritage and culture. So
Yeah.
we've had this now happen for decades, where we've been told to talk down who we are,
Mm,
so that they can pave the way for this mass migration.
yeah.
And you're told, if you talk out about it, then you're racist, you're a bigot, you're a horrible
Yeah.
person, so you can't even debate it. And then it pushed down and pushed down, and it happens for decades, until eventually you find the situation which we're in now, where you've got the rise of parties that did well, like Reform did before.
Mm,
When they stood for actual immigration, and obviously now with Advance, because it's needed. We've got to the point where we're losing who we are completely,
yeah. I mean,
completely losing.
this sort of like, a lot of other people talk about it as well. Politically, I think so. This is probably the last chance saloon that we are reaching in the next upcoming election. And most people are hoping that it happens a lot sooner than 2029, that our general election is called. But this is the last peaceful way, for a peaceful revolution, right? This is why we need a party like Advance UK. We can't just have, reform that is just going to become a blob. This is probably the last peaceful chance, because even before that there might be violence, but after that, right? If we don't like actually have some party that is for the British people, I think so it's going to be a lot of civil unrest.
Yeah, I mean, I probably agree with you there. I think that just looking at the way people are protesting now with
Mm.
things, I mean, it's palpable, you know, what's happening and how people feel. It's quite clearly there, you know, in your face,
Yeah.
with the protests, with the two-tier system that we've
Mm.
got now for the activist judges paving the way for, you know, these hotels to remain in effect. We've got these houses being built essentially to be used as, you know, house of multiple occupancy,
Yeah.
so that they can disperse these people within the communities. And
Mm.
there's no ends to it. There's not
Yeah.
really a limit. There seems to be no limit. They just want to
Mm.
bring all these people in, and we're told to not believe our eyes, not believe our
Yeah.
ears, and you know, it's remarkable, really. So
Yeah.
I do think that I do think it won't be 2029. To be honest with you, I think that the way that the economy is being destroyed, that we'll end up probably going to the IMF before long, and to be bailed out. If that happens, then you know I can see Labour being hopefully forced into a position that they need to sort of hold a sort of, I mean, you should get a say, right? If they've driven the country to be bailed out by the IMF, then the constituents of that country should be able to, the electorate should be able to have their say and say, right, okay, no, we want you out. Look what
Yeah.
you've done. You've destroyed the economy. And at that point, we might get an opportunity ahead of 2028, 2029. But essentially, I mean, Labour are going to cling on to power. We're probably witnessing the last, you know, Labour government. But it'll be interesting. They do have a big majority. They can force through quite a number of different things. They've obviously looked to force through giving 16-year-olds the vote.
Yeah.
And they're doing that because they're scared. They're scared about the way that I suppose the
Mm.
political landscape is shifting. You look at Jeremy Corbyn setting up his party.
Mm.
They're going to be targeting Labour votes. You've got Reform
Yeah.
clearly targeting Labour votes. The Lib Dems are just sort of useless. Really, they add no
Yeah.
benefit to the UK electorate, UK political scene. They don't really stand for anything. So and then obviously Conservatives and you know people aren't going to trust the Conservatives again.
No.
And then
Especially with
you know
this
Reform and
the
then
leadership.
Advance.
Yeah.
So you know I think that it's what I think, and I'll make a prediction exclusive for you, Momus, and we can come back in a few years' time and see if I'm right or not. But I think that they're going to be so concerned that they won't get in and everything else. They might look at actually sort of probably going for PR or some form of that, because they'll be desperate with the majority they've got, of reshaping, you know, any way in which they can to sort of cling on to some sort of semblance of power in the future. Because I do think that with people's voting patterns completely changed, we're probably going to see ways in which the last dying embers of the Uni Party try to cling on to something.
Yeah. So, we had a really good chat. I think so. There is positives. I know, like there are negatives, but we can't really avoid that since we are in a negative situation. I think so. The positive thing is that Advanced UK has burst into the scene. We
Mm.
have like we are reaching close to 30,000 members. Ben said the party will be launched on 27th of September, if I'm not mistaken. So it's like there is a platform for people, right? And for any like sort of small parties, so to speak, it is the fastest any small party has ever grown, right? Because there's a lot of different smaller parties. Even let's take like UKIP or other parties as well, they barely have like 3-4 thousand members, right? So for a party to be just there for 6 to 7 weeks or whatever ago, and still not registered as a party, it is reaching almost 30,000 members plus, right? So there is an appetite in the country. I'm hoping the people in Essex has more of an appetite for it, because you know I think so this is a point where you can hold all these commuter sort of counties can hold London sort of back, you know um so yeah, I mean that's what do you are you like really optimistic about Advance UK? Are you going to stand when the elections come about? Are you going to stand in elections?
Right. So as you said, there are some negatives that we've had to talk on, and you've got to face up to the reality of the situation that you're in. There's no point, pretending otherwise. And
Mm.
some of that is actually dealing with and talking about, what's happened and why. So just to give context on what you said about Advanced UK, it took Reform 5.5 years to get to 30,000 members. That was where they were at in the general election for last year. So they got to 30, around that, 5.5 years. For Advanced UK, we are somewhere in the region of 27, 28,000. I understand it to be. And, we've done that in pretty much almost bang on 2 months. So that shows the appetite that's out there for it. And that there is a lot of hope then, because, Advanced UK sets out a clear message of what we believe in, a clear philosophy. And this is something that's really important, because it tells people there's no mystery behind it. There's no, I don't know where they're going to sit on this issue. There's clear guiding principles as to what we believe in. So you have a good understanding as to what our position would be on almost anything, because you understand the guiding principles behind it. And obviously on the website, if you go to advanceduk.org.uk and you click on what the missions are, you can clearly see it stands for nation state, it stands for freedom of speech, it stands for democracy, and it stands for equality under the law. So they're the guiding principles behind it. And there's a good write-up there, which I would recommend anyone to read before becoming a member. There's that out there, and that won't change. And it won't change because it's not a party of egos. It's not a party of centralized control. It's a party bringing together patriotic people, to sort of, the fearless speakers, the brave and the bold, and there's, people from all different walks of life, not just people that have studied politics in university, that have then been an assistant to some MP, then been given a cushy seat because, they're mates with whoever. It's complete meritocracy where everyone is there on their own merit, and is able to contribute something. So my role was the way that I see it. I would love one day potentially, it would be a privilege to sort of, that one of the reasons I was involved in politics, because I wanted to change, I wanted to help, the country and things like that. So obviously that was there. It was as an ambition. At the moment, it's not about me. I couldn't care less about me. I care about the United Kingdom. I care about the country. I care about the direction it's going in. So I'll do anything really that I feel will add value to that mission, in helping the party achieve that. So if that means that I don't stand because there's someone else that's better, or I can be used in another capacity for the party, then that's fine. That's what I'll do, because it's got nothing to do with my ambition. My ambition for any sort of political career is completely irrelevant. The only thing that matters is the country, and I can't see another party that stands for a sovereign, proud, independent United Kingdom. There's certainly not one on the political landscape at the moment.
Brilliant. I would love for you to stand, because I think so. We need local Essex people to stand for in our seats, and rather than being shipped over here from other places, just like Emmy Badenoch, who doesn't even live in Saffron Walden and barely attends any surgery over there. So, yeah, I would really prefer people like yourselves, who have business and military background. I think so. That's really important, because you know how to think, get shit done, basically. So, it'd be good to have
Well,
you.
I appreciate you saying that. If that's what the future holds, then great.
Yeah.
I think, like I said, I've got to think, larger than
Mm.
me. If I do, great. And I'll give it my absolute all,
Mm.
100%. But at the moment, I feel like, if I can be used in a different way for the
Yeah.
party, because the way that the structure is, it's important not to sort of mix, I suppose, conflicting interests and things.
Mm.
The college needs to consist of people that don't take any kind of money from the party, because
Yeah.
obviously then you're influenced by the party, you're
Mm.
influenced by the leader. You need to be in favor with people. If you're elected as well, then you're held to a certain degree in
Mm.
control of the person that's above you. You need to stand clear of that. You need to be there off pure merit, and you need to stand there purely because you have the interests of promoting the country. So you need to be beyond reproach in that sense. So if I join the college and I feel like, and the party feel like I can contribute in that, then I'll go that way. If not, and they feel like I would be a good candidate, then I would do that. Whatever is going to help, because I really just believe that we talk about the left and the right, of politics, but really, we're
Yeah.
talking about people that believe in a sovereign, independent nation. We're talking about people that believe in a globalist
Yeah.
establishment agenda, and there's no one that's on the side of independent sovereign nation. So
Yeah.
that's what we need to promote. That's what we need to. And a lot of people, they don't think about politics a great deal. They hear some headlines, a couple of headlines, once a week or something. So there's a lot of work to be done. It's quite a literal political mountain that needs to be climbed. So whatever it is that I can help contribute, I'm there. I'm doing it to achieve that aim.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for this conversation. Really good conversation. I hope everyone liked it. I'll put all the links where to find Richard on in the description below, and also it should be appearing on screen every now and then where to find Richard on Twitter as well. All right. Thank you for coming on, Richard. And yeah, we'll speak soon.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Amos. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you.